Hey guys, John here. Unfortunately, I made a little bit of a mistake, a little bit of a boo-boo. Episode 14, it went pretty long, hour and 35 minutes. We had our first guest, Miriam Saidi, an art major, here to grade some Overwatch League logos, but that went a little bit longer, went a nice 25 minutes, and then we had a lot to talk about in the normal podcast because of Seagull's State of Overwatch video. So I have decided to split the episodes into two. We got 14 and we got 14.5, two different episodes. If you want to listen to one or the other, makes it a little more easy to intake if you ask me. So please, I apologize and disregard all the weird intros and outros. I assumed that the interview with Miriam, which unfortunately Joe was not able to be present for, was going to be on top of the original podcast. So I had some weird intros, some weird outros there. So please excuse those. They are separate episodes. I thought they were going to be together in one episode, and that's why I had some weird intros there. So whichever one you are listening to, enjoy. And I can't wait for you guys to listen. Thank you, John and Miriam, for that amazing introduction. I am now here. We have Joe. Joe, we've been waiting about 15 minutes now for you to say hi. Please say hi.
Yes, hi, I'm here. You haven't lost me for good.
Okay, good. Yeah, unfortunately we couldn't record that part with Joe because Miriam she has work usually at the times we record this, so it was hard to get the schedule going. But Joe is finally here. We're here for some normal podcast. We're back to the news. Joe, are you ready to dive in? We got a big week of discussion.
Yeah, as always, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy that Seagull made this video so we can have something to talk about on the podcast, but that isn't until later. That's the big finale.
Yeah.
That's a little tease for you guys. If you guys want to hear that, you're going to have to keep listening. Toronto Esports is our headline, the first piece of news we got last week. Toronto Esports was forced by the Overwatch League to no longer have that branding, the Toronto Esports branding, in the Overwatch contenders. Of course, they are the academy team for the Boston Uprising, if you guys do not know. And I think I personally saw this coming because we have a Toronto team, the Toronto Defiant, now in the Overwatch League. So I fully expected the Toronto Esports Club but to be removed. But there's been a lot of drama. Joe, do you know about all this drama with the owner of the Toronto Esports?
Yeah, it seems like it's sort of related, but sort of not to this request by Blizzard. But yeah, it's been a mess with them for a week or so.
I would not be surprised if they saw all this drama going on and they're like, okay, we're gonna ramp it up on making sure they get rid of this branding here, because their owner, or it's their coach, has just been. He also runs their Twitter. He's been just running rampant, basically, talking crap to everybody and not well. I mean, they've been calling out the Toronto Defiant for a show match for a while. Toronto Defiant has been very silent towards it, probably because they knew in the background that this branding, exclusive naming rights thing was going to happen. But I don't think... Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say for a week or 2 weeks now, the Twitter banner for the Toronto Esports account is just.
Are you afraid?
Yeah, are you afraid? Taunting the Toronto Defiant. People are talking about that this Owl team obviously has everything to lose and basically nothing to gain from playing this show match, which it makes sense why they haven't been.
Yeah,
haven't been accepting it, but
I would just ignore them. They've been doing well at that, but honestly, if the Toronto Esports coach had not been such a bad person these past couple of weeks, I think I think everyone would have been taking Toronto Esports side a lot more on this argument, because everyone really likes the tier 2 scene and wants to make sure it's supported. But they have the coach has dug such a deep hole that no one really cares as long as the players are fine, which they are. Huck tweeted. Exact tweet is, I do not have the ability at the moment to address the recent or current decision out of the Toronto Esports, and we were not part of the decision at all. That being said, we retain ownership of all the player and staff contract and ownership over the contender slot. We will continue to compete as a team, but obviously under a new brand. That is all I can say at the moment, but we'll provide further details at a later date. So I think, Joe, that this tweet right here sealed it for most people. They were like, all right, screw Toronto Esports. These players are going to be fine. The coaches are going to be fine. Screw them, you know?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Any other opinions on this specific event?
Yeah, it's weird because obviously now the Boston Uprising Academy is sort of in limbo. Like I said, they haven't really decided what they're doing with that yet. Well, in fact, I'd be curious because Contenders started up this weekend, and so I wonder, like Contenders North America, I wonder what the former Toronto Esports Overwatch squad is doing. But yeah, it's it's kind of like what we saw with Seattle Sky Foxes that then just became the Sky Foxes. That uh, Blizzard's being more possessive of the like specific city rights than anything. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there will be some shift for Boston. I think partly the Boston organization might be a little bit glad that the focus right now is on their academy team rather than their main one. But yeah, I don't know. Well, but I have to see how that evolves.
It's been an absolute mess. The North American one does not start until the 27th, so I'm
Oh,
guessing they will fix some things. I believe EU and China have started.
that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Australia. No, Australia has started. Australia started yesterday. I think NA and Korea are the only ones that have yet to start. Korea's the 23rd. North America is the 27th. But that's exciting. We get some more. But I totally agree. I think Boston is very. I don't know. Boston as an entire organization now has had tons of drama. I feel like they're the off-season drama champions. So congratulations to Boston and their organization.
Although Atlanta put in a good fight for it,
Yeah, oh yeah,
just
they didn't want
single-handedly.
to. They didn't want to, but they almost did. We have another brand to grade here. Only one this week. But it is one of my favorite ones. The Hangzhou Spark was revealed about 5 days ago now. There was no there were no problems with this reveal. They didn't reveal it on accident too early or anything like that. It came out on time, and Joe, we have it. We have a pink team.
We do, and it wasn't what we had expected originally.
Yeah, it was
In
not
that
at
it's
all.
not Vancouver.
Yeah, it's not Vancouver, who of course got the runaway players. We believe it is not Florida Mayhem, who has been probably begging to change their colors to pink and blue or anything at this point. Um, It is the Hangzhou Spark, and that is even more of a surprise after their leaked logo was blue and not the pink one that they have revealed this week. So that was a nice surprise, despite getting so many leaks. Let's get into grading. Joe, you start us off with the nickname, the Hangzhou Spark. What do you think of the nickname?
Yeah, so this is another one that makes me wonder. I don't know anything about Hangzhou or that area of China, but it makes me think, maybe potentially there's some sort of connection with the area. I don't know if they're like a electric power generating city or something. Um, but it's a, we talked, or at least I mentioned last week when we were doing um, team branding grades, that there's a pretty low standard for these kinds of names. That sure enough, it's not an adjective, so that's something.
Yeah.
We've got. I've seen people comparing it. Well, we've got tons of teams now in the league that have have some sort of power source as their name, with the fuel and the fusion and spark and all this. And it's like, yeah, whatever. It's cool. It makes sense with some of the other things that they have. And it is punnable. That was another criteria I used. So you can make puns out of it. So yeah, it's good. It's the finger gun team, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's for giving it a grade. Yes, it's a solid. That's an A, I think.
Yeah. I agree. I'm gonna give it an A as well. I like it. It's not an adjective. We have a very low standard of nicknames here in the league. I was telling Miriam that in the recorded segment at the beginning, and she noticed there was a very low standard for a lot of things. Unfortunately, the art major believed that a lot of these teams could be doing better. But Hangzhou Spark, that's pretty cool. I enjoy it. I'm a big fan of electricity, and I think it's cool. I don't know, Spark. That's pretty cool. Alongside their logo, I'm just like I have a question. Do you know do you know what's up with the like blue stuff in the spark part of their logo?
I think it's supposed to be just like electricity, like it's sparking around because it's
Okay.
whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of does look like electricity. Just like the thing at the far right kind of looks like it's something that would be in an anime or something. So I wasn't sure if it was a reference. Everything's an anime reference in this thing. But let's move on. Let's move on to the logo, which is an anime reference. I know that for sure. I cannot remember the anime it's from, but I know the owner of Billy, which is the owner of the Hangzhou Spark, really likes this anime. This is his favorite anime. What do you think of the logo?
Ooh, what a good story. But yeah, no, I think the one color is kind of eh. I'm actually just looking at some of these other Overwatch League logos. It's like Toronto, New York, LA Valiant, Dallas, Florida. Okay, there's a few more than I thought that just have one color. I don't know. I kind of wish. Well, I'm glad it's not just the one color blue. Because we have
Lots of blue.
all this blue already. But the pink is good. I almost wish you mentioned there's like some, bluish electricity sparks thing like on the text of the name for Hangzhou Spark. But I almost wish they had put that on the logo instead to go ahead and put in a second color, make it a little bit more interesting. But maybe that's just me. We'll have to see, I guess, when we do our next art segment, whatever we call it. I don't know.
Art segment.
But yeah, the finger gun is kind of whatever. Like you said, if it's a reference to something that it makes it a little better. But I know originally when it was leaked, there were people on Reddit talking about that there were people that they saw on like Weibo, I think, or something, or however you pronounce it, the Chinese Twitter, talking about they didn't like the finger gun because it had a weird connotation in China. But yeah, I don't know. It's if it's what they we'll put it this way. If it's what they like, there's something to be said for that. I don't know if it's what I would have gone for in their position. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems to be very intentional and very direct. So I don't know. I'll give it it's a B.
Yeah. If I were a big fan of this anime, I would be geeking out right now. I'm not a fan of any. There's not a single. The Pokemon anime is like the only one I've watched and enjoyed, really. But the like big movie like TV buff in the back of my mind is saying like, that's so cool. Someone did like a movie TV reference, like they love that show. But at the same time, it is an offensive thing in China. It's a little simple. It's a reference that I don't think too many people are gonna get. But I have to like I just have to give them props for doing it anyway. He like I don't know. It's just cool that he didn't care. He's just like I this is for me. I want to make this logo for me, which is I don't think we've seen that at all in this league so far, or any league. I don't think any team owner has been like this. I want this team to be personalized to me. I don't care. I don't care about marketing it, which is super interesting. But I'm gonna give it a B as well because I agree. One color is kind of. It's just one color is a bit too simple. I think this will maybe grow on me a little bit. But I think Miriam would agree if we'll see her opinion next week. But she does not like the one color logos too much, so she wants a little bit more complexity on these logos, and I think she will say that about this one as well. But we'll have to see. We move on to the best part: the colors. Pink, blue, and white are their colors, Joe. What do you think about them?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a similar thing. That I think probably the colors for this team is what's won them the most fans so far.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously their roster has only just come out, but yeah, the colors. Obviously, there's no other team that will look anything like Hangzhou will. So that's great, and it doesn't look bad. Like the Winston and Reaper that they have on their preview announcement. I don't know. It's just something about it that's appealing. Obviously, it's not Runaway, and so there'll be people who are disappointed about that. But uh, so yeah, the same thing that I was talking about with my logo. That they definitely knew what they wanted, and they definitely just went after it. And so that's definitely an A-worthy color scheme.
Yeah. I give it a big A, a big A. We need it. I mean, we've been talking about it. The grades are heavily based off of a comparison, the context of the league so far. These are super original colors. Obviously, no one else has pink. I mean, no one else in sports, just regular sports, has pink. I've seen so many articles like the Hangzhou Spark is so like brave, like making them seem almost like heroes. Like these are the first pink team, and it's just like wow. I don't know if they deserve that, but super cool. Anyways, we get a pink team, cotton candy, A plus for me. I do wish it was Runaway, but I'll take Hangzhou Spark. That just means that my love for these teams spreads out even more because I'm pretty sure based off the Runaway roster, Vancouver is going to be my favorite team. A little spoiler, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be rooting for Vancouver. But I'll definitely be rooting for Hangzhou Spark too. Based off their roster, which we shall get into right now. They've been doing some nice little announcements, Joe. The past 3 days, they have been releasing 2 names per night, just introducing us. I like this. I like slowly introducing us to each of their players so we get to know them a little more individually. The first night, we got Gushui and we got No Smite. This was I think everyone really liked this one. You got to lead off with Gushui, especially after how much hype there was from the World Cup coming from this guy, the big Chinese tank, of course, that shocked the world. What do you think? Let's go signing by signing here. I guess we'll go by the twos. What do you think of these 2 players, both tanks?
But yeah, so I guess for me personally, there's not tons I can say about the individuals, but one thing we have noticed, at least for the first 4, presumably for Godspeed Bazzi as well, but they all came from, or this good chunk of them came from Korean contenders, which we'll talk about to a certain extent. That even in the contenders season 3 announcement, they were like, especially this Korean region is just going to look incredibly different this upcoming season because of all this talent that's going to the Overwatch League. But yeah, definitely the highlight here is Gushui in the main tank. We saw all the way to the silver medal match versus South Korea. Yeah, that's gonna be really exciting. I want to see some of his teammates potentially coming in too. We'll have to see how reasonable that is, but But yeah, this is like it's like you said, Gushue particularly I know. If you're following Korean contenders, you'll know lots of these other names as well. I don't personally, but it sounds like they're really doing what they need to be doing here.
Yeah, they got some X6 Gaming and Seven are the main rosters they're picking out of. I guess I'll say the next four: Adora, Rhea, Bazzi, and Godsby have all also been picked up. I really like Godsby. He's probably one of the more underrated DPS in Korean contenders. He was on X6 Gaming, and he's another one of those Surefour types. He is just super flexible, can play almost any DPS in the game. I mean, in the Reddit thread, everyone was asking, is he hit scan or projectile, and everyone was like, he's everything. He plays everything. So Godsby, he's very flexible. I think he could become one of the best players next season. Honestly, I really like Godsby. But as far as other Chinese players on that Chinese team, I'm so sad that so many of them are just too young to be in Overwatch League. Gushue, luckily we get him. He is old enough. We'll see what other Chinese players go on to these teams, but I know there were rumors that a lot of Chinese players will be heading into Overwatch League. We'll see what else Hangzhou has in store for us. Of course, they're not done yet. They need 8 players, right?
Yep.
That's
By like the 8th of December, I think, or the 6th.
that's coming up. That is coming up. Any thoughts on these other 4 players I've added to the mix?
No, yeah, um, it's a team still in the
It's
middle of being made, you know.
it's hard to compare these contenders players to Overwatch League players. We have not seen too many of them face off. We have seen Gushue face off against Overwatch League players, and he fared pretty well. Um, but we haven't been able to see a lot of these Korean contenders players go head to head against Overwatch League teams. So should be interesting. Joe, you're the patch man, right? The old patch guy. And
Sure.
we've got some patches. We have a live patch and we have a PTR patch to go over. Cool.
Yes, we got a live patch and a PTR patch. Yeah, both came out in the last week. Um, and so this live patch, obviously, this is 1.30, and now Ash is live. If you've been playing her for, I think almost a week now, maybe. Came out on the 14th. So, yeah, almost a week now. Um, so yeah, Ash is live. We know about her. Ash and Bob, we've talked about her a lot. The jump height changes have gone through. If that was something you were concerned about, Mercy got a buff. Ultimate cost reduced 15%. We talked about this already. Reaper and Roadhog got their shotguns. Spread changed a little bit. Reaper got a buff on his lifesteal. Symmetra got a buff for primary fire charges, 20% faster now. Yeah, so that's live. Live currently, and I think I saw, unfortunately, that Contenders Season 3 is like the entire season is on 1.29.
Ooh.
So already outdated, but we'll see. Maybe they change it, but yeah, but that's
No
1.30.
Ash.
Yeah, no Ash.
Very
That would be a
sad.
shame. But that's 1.30. That's what's live right now. And then yes, we did get a PTR patch, either the same day or the day after, to take us to 1.31. So it looks like they've added some audio changes. You can use Windows Spatial Audio if you're a
Ooh.
Windows Spatial Audio fan. You can use that while playing Overwatch now. And so I think we might have alluded to these on our last show or a couple shows ago or something. But there are some interesting hero changes on here. On the PTR right now, we have a Bastion buff where his recon mode, that's when he's up and walking around, which I say because I always get him confused. In his recon mode, he has 35 ammo now instead of 25. In his sentry mode, that's the turret mode, his spread has been decreased. This is up to 30%, up to 33%, and I think that's like over time. So it starts at what it would be normally, and then decreases by 33% as you shoot. Which there's a Bastion buff for you for all you Bastion mains that were complaining about needing a Bastion buff.
So many complaints.
Yeah. We did get a Brig nerf because no patch is complete without a Brig nerf. Um, like I think everything that has been done to her so far has been a nerf since launch. But this one is really big. This is a Shield Bash nerf that Shield Bash will no longer travel or stun targets through barriers. So that includes Rhine Shield, that includes Winston Bubble, that includes Orisa Shield, presumably Symmetra Shield as well. Yeah, that if you try to bash through, at least a few days ago, people were saying, occasionally you might move through, but none of the damage goes through and none of the stun goes through, which is really big. Obviously we've seen this meta coming around, lots of Rhine Brig especially, to help you with your bash shatter combos, but those are going to be a lot harder to pull off now. Now that the opposing Rhine has the ability to manipulate his shield to try to catch the Brig in the stun. You can still try to go around and stun from a different angle, but that'll just make it that much harder for the Rhine Brig to coordinate that combo, which that's, we'll get into this, but this seems like an example of what they're talking about, of trying to create counterplay where there didn't used to be any. So that's so that the opposing Rhine isn't doomed. That you don't have to get lucky with a Zarya bubble and a Transcendence and whatever, like South Korea did, to try to block a shatter. So that's significant for sure.
It seemed like Brig was not only countering Dive, but was countering Goats, the comp she is featured in, because of the fact that she could do that to Reinhardt's. So this is a very nice change.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really big too once we start. Once this actually goes to live and we start season play on it. Similarly, we have a duration lowered. So this is it's nerf, slight nerf to Doomfist. The rising uppercut, loss of air control, duration lowered from 3 seconds to just 0.6, which is actually a lot. And then seismic slam, maximum range reduced from 20 meters to 15 meters. So both of these are nerfs, and essentially, again, trying to allow a little bit more space for the defenders, or from the people who are being attacked by the Doomfist. So, because previously you get uppercut by Doomfist and it was 3 seconds that you couldn't control your movements. So you were locked in a really super predictable trajectory that either the Doomfist with his primary fire or his teammates could really just rain shots down on you. But now that's over very quickly. So you can not only try to dodge around there, but have some of your own tools to potentially escape from that. So that's significant. And then seismic slam, obviously, that's just going to make it a little bit harder for the Doomfist to go shooting across the map, or shooting down from high ground, depending. This patch note actually says potentially making it harder for him to escape from combat too. So that's all of those things together. We've seen how important, or how powerful Doomfist is right now. So again, trying to tone that down again here.
Yep, I'll take a Doomfist nerf any time of the week. I don't know, it's annoying to play against Doomfist, that's for sure.
McCree got a little bit of a buff. His right click, each individual bullet goes from 45 to 55 damage on Fan the Hammer. So if you're a McCree main, that's probably actually pretty useful. That'll make you a little bit more potent in close range engagements, as this says. So that's helpful.
Better against tanks as well.
Yeah, tanks especially. With hybrids of like McCree goats type thing, it'll be helpful against more tanks. Yeah,
which is good. We need some DPS buffs to kill tanks. So
and speaking of which, Speaking of which, we'll just do this out of order. We got a Tor buff. His Molten Core, the lava pools now deal 160 damage per second instead of 130. Obviously, that was ultimate sort of intended through his rework to to be a type of tank counter, especially since it does extra damage versus armor. So that's something at least. We'll have to see whether that actually affects its usage much. Because it doesn't change its viability, it just changes the amount of damage it does once you're actually running Dorb. So, but there's a little bit of a buff there. And then finally, Soldier. Attack Visor is this sort of a quality of life change than anything else. Obviously, his left click is all aimbot, which is great because it's hit scan, so all of those will hit. But previously, his right click, the Helix rockets, were also aimbotted, but they would be fired at where the target was, but obviously they're a projectile, and so by the time they got there, they'd usually miss. So this change actually has turned off the aimbot for Helix rockets while you are using Tac Visor, so that you can actually aim it, in theory, actually landing them, because you can try to predict your targets even while you're ulting, which will be helpful, again, for when you're playing Soldier.
Yep.
Let's see, a bunch of bug fixes. Yeah, that's your 1.31 patch. I mean, we do actually know, even beyond that, some things that are coming.
Yes,
I don't know if they're adding. I don't know if they're adding this to 1.31 or if they're making they're going all the way to 1.32. But they said a PTR patch will probably come out on Monday, which is today. I'll see if that happens. But other changes we're looking at that are coming down the pipe. More Brig nerfs, although kind of. This time it is accompanied by a buff, which I do really think is the first buff that she's gotten since launch, which is significant. But Shield Bash, now the damage on live and on the PTR right now is 50 damage for a Shield Bash. This proposed change is going to bring that down only to 5 damage, which is, I think, even less than a flashbang. I think a flashbang is like 20 or something.
Yeah.
It's even less than a flashbang now on the Shield Bash stun. But as a result of that, because again, that was a big part of, for example, her Tracer combo to deal 150 damage, and so to sort of combat that, her Inspire has been buffed pretty decently, significantly, I think. Excuse me. To go, the cooldown for triggering Inspire has been reduced from 1.5 to 1 second. So every time that gets triggered again now, only 1 second after its end. The duration of Inspire increases from 5 to 6 seconds, and the total healing is increased from 80 to 100, which is, I think, if I'm doing my math right, a little bit of an HPS buff too as well. Because it used to be 16 and now it's a little bit over 16, but whatever. It's like
quick math.
96 for something. Anyway. But yeah, so to tune up sort of the healer side of Brig, and a little bit down on the offense, this developer note, to make sure that she's still a viable pick, because that Shield Bash nerf had him concerned, apparently.
Yeah.
But you have any on that, or we'll just get to Doomfist too?
Yeah, I think the healing I totally welcomed. For me, I would rather her be a healer than a damage dealer, for sure. The Shield Bash 50 to 5. A lot of people think this is brutal. It is very brutal. That is a very, very big nerf. But honestly, Brig deals way too much damage. I would rather all supports be healers and heal more. And she still does damage with her primary and the whip shot. So I think Brig, I like this nerf to Brig a lot. Doom, what else is coming to Doom?
Yeah, so it's more nerfs to Doomfist. Well, a nerf and sort of a change. Similar to the PTR change that's on right now. A change to Seismic Slam, where the victims will no longer lose air control at all while being pulled in. So you'll still be knocked up a bit, and you'll still be pulled in towards Doomfist, but you'll have a lot more control the whole time to be able to counter that movement, to affect that movement. Again, a little bit more counterplay. And then Meteor Strike, which apparently during development was called Skydrop, because that's how this announcement was originally made. But then it was changed to Meteor Strike, because that is the name of the ultimate. That the inner ring damage radius has been increased from 1.5 to 2 meters, where it deals the full 300 damage. So that makes it a wider target to hit. But the max damage outside of that ring has been decreased from 300 to 200. So that as soon as you go outside of that now 2 meter ring, then you get 200 damage, and then fall off all the way to 15 at max range. So essentially what that does is it makes the targeting a little bit easier, but if you manage to get outside of that outer ring, if you are Brig, May, or Reaper, you won't die immediately. So that's something, I guess. Because the note here, it says the media strike changes will make it harder to secure a free kill on heroes without mobility, such as Zen or Ana, while still preserving its max potential damage, which is kind of doesn't make sense because the death zone has been increased in size. So maybe that's a typo, but it's been up for like a day and a half or 3 days. Never mind. It's been up for a long time, so I don't know exactly what they're thinking with that, but it's a change to Meteor Strike, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah. I my favorite part of this patch is this little post right here, by Jeff Goodman is the last paragraph saying that they're looking carefully at the amount of crowd control abilities and trying to remove or reduce some of the effectiveness of those, which is fantastic news for anyone who agrees with Seagull's video that came out this week. And that is I would say most pros, most streamers as well, constantly tweeting about how it's just a crowd control fest in this game nowadays. So that's big news that they really want to focus on those abilities.
Before we get into the state of Overwatch, one other thing they didn't put in the patch notes, but on the PTR right now, if you own an Overwatch League home skin or an away skin, on the PTR right now, you also own the other one. So whether you bought them with Overwatch League credits, you bought home skins, now you own all of the corresponding away skins. And if for whatever reason you have the Twitch Prime All Access Pass and have some away skins, you now also own the corresponding home version. Again, on PTR. Presumably that'll be transferred to live as well once patch 1.31 goes through. But so that's kind of cool for, making that transition between season 1 and season 2. You have a few more skins under your belt, and now when you buy one skin, you'll essentially get 2 for the price of 1 now. I get the impression from now on, so that's kind of cool.
That is very nice.
And that's a way for them to get the away skins into the game too.
Yeah, a lot of people always complained that the skins were a bit too much money. So that's very nice. Very nice of them to add the away skins, and some of the away skins look very, very good. So I appreciate that. Changed a lot. There is one more thing before we get into the state of Overwatch that I forgot to add to this. The away skins reminded me of the All Access Pass and the survey. Twitch had a survey on the All Access Pass from last year, and that survey, I guess it's not a leak exactly, because I'm pretty sure they purposely basically showed us what next year's All Access Pass is going to be including. And what the biggest thing is basically you get to choose what observer you are observing. You can observe any of the players, any of the 12 players. You can put that on screen. You can choose out of, I think, 3 or 4 of the observers' cameras, and then you can choose the main camera. But you also can choose multiple cameras at once and make your own little command center of different camera angles. So that's a very nice change. I think this will be a good option for people who people who would like to have the production value with the casters in there and everything while observing any angle you want. Of course, this is there's going to most likely be an option to do the in-game observer like the World Cup again, which I believe, for me personally, will still be the better option for replays, since you get to dive in wherever you would like. Joe, you seem surprised. I don't think you heard of this change. What do you think? What are your initial reactions to it?
Yeah, so I think the more they add, obviously, the more money it's worth. I think definitely in my case, or I should say, the more it's worth your money. Hopefully, they don't increase the price. But I think in my case, particularly, the reason I bought the All Access Pass last season was for the skins and in-game items, and not for the stream quality. I think I actually watched the regular stream more than I watched the All Access stream probably last season.
Yeah.
Just because it was kind of but more options is always good. I can appreciate that. Like you said, eventually they'll ideally be able to have, because I think once they're able to pipe the casters into the client to do the in-client spectating, yeah, that's I'm with you that that's what I would much prefer to do. But also to be able to hear the production going on. So once that's available, that's probably what I'll go for. But until then, more freedom, I think is going to be a good thing.
Oh yeah, I'd never use the command center. It was I feel like it was objectively a worse way to watch the game was the command center. Um, but I did like the post game press conferences a lot. That was a cool part. That was probably the only thing I used on Twitch, but the skins were dope as well. So All Access Pass looking like a good thing to purchase next year because they're finally adding the thing everyone wanted them to add last year. Now we head to our topic finally. Seagull. He came out with this video. It has a million views now on the state of Overwatch. It's like an almost 30-minute video, right?
21 minutes and 37 seconds. I
Yeah,
pulled up right here.
it's like this. That's the same time as like a sitcom. So if you either chose to watch an episode of Friends or you watched this video, so he went over. He had some. I feel like he had like 3 or 4 main points. I believe his overarching theme was Overwatch is not fun to play right now, and you feel if you just feel helpless. Basically, is what he is saying, and I believe that has a lot to do with all these CC abilities. And he mentioned Brig a lot. He knows that I got a lot more information from like his thoughts behind it all. I don't know if you watched this at all, but it was right after the video came out. Twitch, Surefour, Jayne, Seagull, and then eventually XQC, just going through this video talking about solutions to it and thoughts. Seagull's thoughts behind all of it. Which I watched the whole stream of that as well. He has it on. He has the highlight on his YouTube, which is like almost 2 hours. But I thought it was super interesting just listening to Surefour, Seagull, and Jayne all sort of propose possible solutions to the problems at hand. What? First of all, I guess, do you agree with Seagull's sentiment?
Yeah, so like you said, it came in several parts, and one of them was that feeling of let me back up, because what he talked about specifically, he emphasized several times, both in that stream, which I saw some of, and also in his first video, was that his main takeaway, to the extent that he was writing to the Blizzard devs, his main takeaway for the Blizzard devs was to communicate the way that the game makes him feel, rather than oh, this is bad and this is bad and you need to do this, right? It just talked about because in the past, that's what the game dev team has said that they find helpful, right? Is to know what the effects of the things that they've implemented on the players. So to be able to say this feels bad because I feel like I have a loss of agency is valuable, and potentially more valuable, certainly for most of the community, who doesn't have any way of, being good at game design or any clout in knowing what we're talking about. But to be able to say, I feel this way for this reason is super helpful. for the devs. But yeah, so then some of the things he was saying was, I feel like in most of my games, I have no control over the way my team performs without actually taking control of my team. He was saying, I feel like the power level of ultimates in the game is too high, and to the extent that you can go into fights knowing that the other team will press Q and they will win that fight. I don't know if you saw there was Seagull was doing a VOD review of USA versus Canada, I think. No, it wouldn't have been USA versus Canada. It was
No.
like USA versus just UK, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
on Route
UK.
6 on Route 66, and goes into a bit of a rant. Um, at one point, just talking about, you see, if you didn't use the Qs, then you'd have the Qs and you'd be able to win the Qs, but you saved the Qs, and it's hard to communicate. But you have to see if you can go find that. He was doing a VOD review, US UK on Route 66, but that these were the same kind of ideas he was communicating. A few days later, maybe he had to sort of condense them in his mind. That all obviously, all Overwatch has always been a game about ultimates, but to the extent that I think even particularly there was some focus on DPS ultimates, because one of the comments he made was, if you have to have defensive ultimates that literally make your team invulnerable in order to counter, grab dragon, for example, that's there's something to be said for that. So back to your question about, what did I think about some of the things he was saying? I think for me, I don't think I've ever said this on the show before, but I'll be honest, I play in bronze. I'm a bronze player on the ladder, but it was interesting for me to hear, as not a pro player, and as not a high level ladder player, to hear about the way they think about some of the games. Stylosa often says, that you go into your competitive games, and I think the number he uses is like 40% of the games you're always going to win because the other team is bad or there's poor matchmaking or whatever, and you have to actually try hard to throw. And 40% of the games that you're in, you absolutely cannot win because somebody on your team leaves, or somebody on the other team is a Smurf or something. And there's only like 20% of the games that you personally can have the control, depending on your choices, whether you win or not. And I don't know if Seagull necessarily agrees with that or not, but I think that's the general sentiment that he was expressing, just like I would have, I think, even down at the other end of the ladder. That was valuable, that even for different reasons. That I think it's fair to say, because bronze players in Overwatch play a different game than even plat players in Overwatch play, really. Okay. But to be able to see that there are parallels from what the pros see, to what high level ladder players see, to what clearly lots of other people in the community see. I think that was valuable. And I'll stop talking to you. You can say some things now.
Okay. Despite being Bronze Joe, you have a very wide knowledge of the game, and that is impressive. But yeah, I'm that plat perspective, but I don't know. I have extreme bias towards the competitive side of the game and the Overwatch League and top 500, despite being in plat. I still think the game should be adjusted based off what the top thinks. I agree with Seagull. At first, I was like, because as plat, maybe I'm not frustrated as much as someone near the top. I do get frustrated every once in a while. I'm also a tank support main, so I am not a DPS main. I can totally understand, though, right now how tough it must be to be a damage dealer in Overwatch, because if you want to play hit scan, there are shields all over the place, divas in your face all the time. You just cannot. Your only options as a DPS player right now are Doomfist and Sombra, which are Doomfist is probably attractive to people who played Genji in the past, and Sombra she's not the most fun DPS to play. Her main strength is her right click, basically hacking people. So which doesn't take too much skill. That's not as fun for the people in the game who want to play damage dealers. They want to play a skill hero. And Sombra it's not as much skill as they would like, probably. There was a post on the normal Overwatch subreddit. I think most of the competitive Overwatch subreddit was in agreement with Seagull. The game is annoying to play right now. Complete opposite sentiments out of the normal Overwatch subreddit camp, saying that basically a lot of people assuming that Seagull's a Tracer main, which is a terrible, terrible assumption to make. He hates Tracer. Since the beta of this game, he has disliked Tracer as a character. And even in like Mystery Heroes, if he gets Tracer, he quits. He will not play as Tracer. He refuses. So that's immediately a pretty poor assumption. But this whole long paragraph post, basically, if I had to sum it up, is basically like, basically too long didn't read as shut up DPS mains. Like, you guys are annoying. Which is, I think, as a tank and support main, the most ridiculous thing to say in a meta where DPS are as weak as they have ever been. And in the post, he basically says Seagull or all these DPS mains, if Tracer isn't working because they have a Brig, then switch to Brig. And I think they're completely missing the point there. Like, there's a whole paragraph basically talking about the game is about switching, but you're telling a DPS player to switch to a support. I think if, as a tank player, you would be very upset if DPS were super strong. This person who made the post is I believe, a main tank player who talks about Wrecking Ball and Reinhardt. If you were playing Reinhardt and he was like, and someone on your team was like, Reinhardt sucks right now, switch. And you're like, okay, I guess. And he was like, you have to switch to Genji because DPS are overpowered right now. You would be very upset. I would be very upset. I suck at DPS. So I don't think you can come out here and tell Tracer mains or tell DPS players to switch to Brig. I do not think that is fair, because Brig is not a DPS character. They come to this game to play skilled characters, aim at people, kill people, because they are DPS mains. They don't want to play Brig. They do not want to. It's an unfair sentiment to make, to tell these players to go play a support. When right now, why would you? I just don't understand, because right now almost every tank is viable, every support is viable. This is the point in the game where tanks and supports have been overpowered ever since Brig came out, and you're just not going to let DPS complain for a second, because they're filthy DPS mains. They insta-lock DPS. Like, it almost feels like racism to me in a way. Like, you're a filthy DPS main. Like, just shut up. I play tank and support. I actually support my team. I'm nice. Like, don't be like that. DPS players want to play the game too. Just let them. So that's my thoughts on that. On the post titled "Nerf This: The Ballad of Tracer and Brigitte." It has like 5 golds. People have been upvoting this post to hell and back over on the main Overwatch subreddit, and I disagree with almost every word in it. So, do you have any thoughts on that, on the post?
For that particular post, I thought that was an interesting perspective I didn't quite get, at least from the first time that I read it. One of the lines I did agree in there, though, was they were talking about the sentiment about that lots of people in the community have, and it's a viable thing to say, is that we want counterplay for abilities, right? That we want to be able to be able to react and to be able to use your skill to respond to other things that people do. Um, but the point that they made here, let's see, this is u/Final Fantasy IV. So in their post, they said that there's a difference between allowing for counterplay and playing into a character's strengths. They said, I'll just quote here. It says, if you get too close to Brig as a squishy, thinking you can 1v1 her, then that's not Brig being OP. That's the equivalent of Ryan charging a Sentry configuration Bastion, or chasing Pharah as Junkrat, or Genji trying to go up against Moira. That there are intentional things that are done. Particularly again the Bastion thing at a low elo. That's a good example of that. But the distinction between trying to create counterplay and I don't know if it was this post or not, but somebody talking about that it would be weird if somebody made a post complaining about, well, why can't I 1v1 Genji as Mercy? Nerf Genji, which obviously that's a bit ridiculous, but there is that distinction, that the Brig is there to serve a purpose, and lots of just the general hate that Brig gets is mostly undeserved, at least in my opinion. Obviously, there are things that can be changed, and there are changes that are being made for Brig, but there are things that are intentional about the game. I guess. Yeah. So, do you have anything to say to that? Because then I wanted to.
Yeah. I guess as far as counterplay goes, I really like the nerf that they did to Brig, because I still think she counters Tracer and Genji pretty well with her shield bash, and no damage to it, and no one shot to a Tracer. I don't think you need to one shot her to counter necessarily. And I think it allows, like Seagull said, that counterplay instead of the rock, paper, scissors matchup. It's while Brig still counters Tracer, Tracer is able to outskill the Brig and win in some scenarios. And she's not, because her purpose is to harass the backline, and Brigitte just existing makes it so Tracer's purpose just doesn't work. So you just can't play Tracer into Brigitte. So I think an ability. I agree with Seagull's point that counterplay is good, but there should be a chance, like he was talking about for Pharah, while Soldier and McCree counter Pharah, there's still a chance for that Pharah to outskill the Soldier and McCree and win that battle.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about that?
I guess I wanted to mention at least, you said after this, after Seagull posted this video a couple days later, they had a big marathon stream with Seagull and Surefour and XQC and Jayne. Like I said, I watched part of that, but one of the things, I don't know if you've followed up on this, but one of the things they suggested on that stream, and then Jayne has been doing a little bit with his Elo Hell community, and the pug squads that they have set up these last couple of days. He's been running games both with hero bans and with timed ults, both of which were things that they brought up on that stream, as potential solutions to these problems. And again, I don't know that I necessarily agree with the community trying to provide the solutions necessarily, but it's been interesting to watch. Like I said, I don't know if you've seen any. But you can go back and look at some VODs from Jayne's channel of games that they played. Obviously, Brig gets banned a lot, which is probably telling. But for example, games that they've played without Brig and Ryan, or Brig and Doomfist, I saw one that was banned. And it's really interesting, just because of the nature of the really small hero roster. They've been only been doing one ban per side. And things like that, but and then timed ults. They were talking about that was another one of Seagull's complaints, that the ultimates were too powerful, and so they said, well, if they happened if they happened less often or they weren't um, based on individual performance, to kind of prevent that kind of snowball thing. Um, so they've been experimenting with that too. But I don't know. It's been interesting to watch, sort of the alternate universe of what would happen if, and try to watch some of these, streamers and stuff, semi-pro pugs, try to deal with these kind of things.
Yeah, I definitely want to see the. I'm gonna go back and rewatch these. I want to see the time alts. I want to see the bands as well. I am in favor for both of those, honestly, but I don't think they'll do bans quite yet. I think bans are further down the line once they maybe a year at least. I could see them wanting like one or two more of support tank and DPS before putting in a ban. Um, just because they want more characters. I think we're at a point where we could probably do it. And I really like bans, and I think bans make it. I really like Surefour's point, or maybe it was Jayne, or I don't think it was Seagull because I don't think he's played too many MOBAs. But in that stream, they were talking about how Riot, the developer for League of Legends, is able to basically go bananas on their nerfs and their buffs because bans exists in the competitive ladder. And if they make something too insanely overpowered, it'll just get banned, and the community will come in and save them on it. So they have been, I think the best part of bans is that the developer is able to do some crazy things to characters without being punished heavily, basically. Because if Blizzard puts in a ban of someone or puts in a patch and someone's super overpowered, then the competitive ladder is just useless for like another 3 weeks, basically, because that's how long Blizzard takes. So I think bans would allow Blizzard to be a lot more flexible as the developer. And I also would really like to see what different team comps. I think the ultimate ban would be banning Brigitte, but then also banning like Winston. Because obviously banning Brigitte is so that a team could play dive. But then what if you also ban someone like Winston, who is a very good dive character? We all know he's like the main dive hero. Like what kind of team comps would you be getting if you ban Brig and then the other team ban Winston because they don't want the team to play dive? That would be super interesting to me. It's just seeing what kind of team comps and team play we get. But I believe in Jayne's stream, we mainly just got a bunch of dive because Brig was banned every game.
Yeah.
But yeah, timed ultimates, that's pretty cool too. I think it fixes. I don't know. Seagull was being very back and forth on the ultimates thing. I think he was being super specific. He wants it fixed, but he doesn't have a solution for it, basically. Because he doesn't like time alts. He likes that alts take skill to build up, but snowballing is just. I feel like snowballing almost comes hand in hand with that, so it's super hard. I like the idea of time ultimates, but I think the community is way more split. I think the community is split on both bans and time ultimates. I think a lot of people like the skill aspect of ultimates right now, but I'm down for time ultimates if it gets rid of snowballing. Of course, I'm way different. I'm always thinking like, what am I gonna like to watch the most in Overwatch League? I don't know what I probably should think, what would I like to play the most? That would probably be helpful. I think that's the way everyone else is thinking. So, what do you think about those two?
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction, yeah, between what do you want to play versus what do you want to watch. It's that's another one of the things that some people have been complaining about. It's I don't know if that was necessarily a Seagull thing because um, being in a different position relative to the pro game, but that if you get to the point where that lots of people feel that it's more fun to watch the game than actually to play the game, that's telling. That's worth considering that distinction.
Yeah. Anything else on this? It was a lot to unload. There's a lot of stuff talked about.
And there still is tons and tons of stuff. We talked about, Seagull has a video. Go watch that. Jayne, with that original round table stream was on Jayne's channel, right, or Seagull's?
Yeah, it was on, I think, all three. I think Jayne was streaming. Seagull was also streaming. I don't know if Surefour was streaming. I think you could find it on either of their Twitch channels, but it is on Seagull's YouTube channel too.
Yeah, it makes sense, I guess. And then there are tons of Reddit threads, tons of stuff. Go if you're interested in this kind of thing, go out and read, because there's lots of different people, lots of different opinions going around.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Jayne Seagull Surefour stream the most because it was them not only putting out the problems that Seagull mentioned, but brainstorming solutions. I liked the brainstorm a lot, and the possible options like bans and stuff like that. I think those were really cool. Any last comments? I know there was probably something we're forgetting that I could talk about for days, but yeah, I think I guess to sum it up, this video was amazing. I think for a second there, he had like the Overwatch subreddit like in his palm, and they were reacting to this video. They were literally like, yeah, he's right. Like, this subreddit sucks at discussion, and we only post highlights. And then that post that I mentioned before came the next day, and now everything's back to normal.
Yeah, I guess the last part of this that we're missing is some sort of official response that we haven't gotten yet, and we may not ever. But
everyone thought Jeff Goodman's like PTR edition was the response, and I was like, no way, that
better not be.
That was immediately after they just like all of a sudden just like, oh, we gotta make these nerfs.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So we'll have to see if something like, because ideally we can get some kind of one of those developer update videos, with just Jeff doing some visioning, and ideally more than Jeff Kaplan, getting like if we could get a visioning round table sort of video, with some Overwatch developers, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
who knows if that's gonna happen, but
I would love their response, or just Jeff like coming on, because they have the streamer studio now or whatever, where they bring in at Blizzard headquarters, where they're bringing in Overwatch streamers like pretty often. I'd be interested because Surefour was just there. I'd be interested. I think Seagull was supposed to go, but he was sick, and Iman had to go instead. I would love to see Seagull over there, and basically they just talk about this, and I want to see what their stances on things like bans and things like timed ultimates, and I want to see what their thoughts are on the competitive ladder right now. And I mean, if they even agree with Seagull, they might not even agree. So they might not be making changes, but I don't think there's been like a change to competitive play since like season 2 or 3, or I don't know, maybe 4. It's been a very long time since a new competitive season has rolled around, and they were like, "Oh, here's a change," because it seems like a new competitive season rolls around and they've got nothing new. So, I would love some new stuff in the competitive ladder.
Yeah.
Anything else from this past week? Any rants? Anything, Joe? Do we end it here?
I think we can, certainly. I mean, this is probably our longest episode in a while.
Yeah, because we've also got the art segment on top of this one. So, yeah.
We've got 2 more teams to come eventually, Vancouver and DC.
We already know DC's is crap, but Vancouver,
but it's not officially crap yet.
It's not officially crap. We will officially call it crap, hopefully next week. But yeah, if you guys want to follow us on social media, our personal Twitter accounts, mine is JWGeorgeIV, Joe's is Kirkpatrick_Inc. INC, and our show's Twitter is On The Flank Show. You could tweet at us if you guys have any topics or questions you want us to answer. You could also email us those questions and topics on theflankshow@gmail.com. Of course, you're listening to this in some way, but if you want to listen to it in a different way, we're at ontheflank.podbean.com. My personal YouTube channel, which is John George, but you probably have better luck finding it on my Twitter page. We're on Apple Music and iTunes if you're an iPhone user. If you're an Android user, we are on Spotify, and we are now officially on Google Play. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll check you guys out next week.